Joe Biden is the first U.S. president to take part in commemorations for what's thought to be the U.S.'s worst incident of racial violence. Some 300 black residents of the once prosperous African-American neighborhood of Greenwood in Tulsa were killed in 1921 as it was burned to the ground. Biden met with the last survivors of the massacre and pledged to address the systemic racism that keeps African Americans disadvantaged, promising to address inequity in home appraisals, black homes being valued at tens of thousands less than white homes, and to order more federal contracts for black businesses.
The data shows young black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are. But they don't have lawyers, they don't have accountants, but they have great ideas.
Local businesses welcomed the focus, but the head of the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce that was formed by survivors of the massacre as they attempted to rebuild is skeptical.
The President of the United States is here, and I can't even meet him to talk about how we can preserve this district, how we can help grow these black businesses. The city of Tulsa is making money, the state of Oklahoma is making money, right? These mainstream hotels is making money, but the historic black district is not going to get a dime.
Biden hasn't advanced a key campaign pledge to forgive student debt, which civil rights groups say would go a long way to narrowing that racial wealth gap, nor has he spoken out in favor of reparations for slavery or even reparations for the remaining survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre, who 100 years after they lost everything still have received no compensation. There hasn't been any accountability for the massacre either. White mobs were actively supported by the police and city authorities. Activists see a direct link between today's disproportionate police violence against African Americans and the burning of what was known as Black Wall Street.
My brother Terrence Crutcher was killed right here in this community with his hands in the air, unarmed, by a police officer of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And 100 years prior to that, my great-grandmother, her community, this sacred land I'm standing on, was burnt to the ground. State-sanctioned violence. It's the same police culture that exists today that continues to harm black and brown people in this city.
From racial economic disparities to official racist violence, this commemoration has revealed deep continuity between 1921 and 2021. Shihab, Rattansi, Al Jazeera, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Dominic Whitehead is Vice President of Campaigns at the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, also known as the NAACP. He says cancelling student debt would go a long way to closing the wealth gap, something omitted from Biden's speech.
I think now we're in a place, we've been in this place, particularly African Americans in this country, when we began to discuss issues around racial equity and closing the wealth gap in this country. The administration is definitely going in the right direction when we think about fair housing and really looking at the housing. We think about education and investing into HBCUs, but also in urban and rural education. When we're looking at the job market and looking at the infrastructure bill that's still in Congress right now, we know that it's going into the right direction. However, we also know that African Americans are disproportionately affected by student loan debt, like many Americans. So being able to cancel student debt will automatically and almost immediately change some of the wealth gaps that we see in this country when we think about being able to purchase a home. Right? Home ownership is typically the fast track in terms of gaining some type of wealth and beginning to close the wealth gap in so many ways. So we know the numbers are there, the data is there, that the cancellation of student debt, particularly for African Americans, will be a step in the right direction. Now, again, everything that the president lifted up on today, what came out of the budget towards the end of last week before the Memorial Day holiday, is definitely a step in the right direction. But we need to go further, and we can go further. And that conversation is absolutely around the student debt.